Welcome everyone to the Real Talk podcast. I am your host, Liam Crowley, and today we are covering many topics including JJ Abrams now directing episode 9, the Hellboy picture, the new Thor Ragnarok posters, and its box office. I am your host, Liam Crowley, and this is a podcast where we're going to dive into all the topics revolving around movie news, some TV, and much, much more. I started this podcast because I wanted a way to talk about movies, something I'm very passionate about, and reach an audience that could share my opinions or maybe not share my opinions, but I wanted to get an audience just to hear me talk about my passion. I'm more focused on getting my ideas out there and just being able to just have a conversation about movies and knowing that someone or a few people are listening. I don't know. This is the first episode, so it's going to be a little rough. There might be some errors I make, but that's just kind of how it is. But I'm very excited to start this podcast, and I'm hoping to do 1 to 2 shows a week and possibly have some guests on. No necessarily big movie stars or even actors in general, but just a few friends that also share my love of movies and have a vast knowledge themselves. So I'd say let's get right into it. The first thing I want to discuss is the Hellboy picture. Now I'm going to pull that up now. And obviously Hellboy being played by David Harbour, known from Stranger Things as the police chief. His name escapes me right now, his character name. But I do also remember he was in the conversation to play Cable at one point when Deadpool 2 was in the early stages. Obviously, that role now belongs to Josh Brolin, who is playing 2 Marvel roles at once, basically, with Cable and Thanos, despite the fact Thanos is obviously CGI. But considering that movie, well, both Infinity War and Deadpool 2 come out next year, but he will also be reprising the role in Infinity War Part 2, or whatever they decide to call it, in 2019. And I would imagine he would also be in X-Force and stuff like that. So that's Josh Brolin. But back to David Harbour as Hellboy. Now, I've never been a huge Hellboy fan. It always seemed like a great property and like one that deserved exploring and going further with the lore of it. But the first 2 movies, I agree. The first movie is very good, very well made, especially on the budget it was on. And the original Hellboy, Ron Perlman, I hope I'm saying that right, was fantastic in the job. And I do know that he couldn't come back for this one, obviously. But David Harbour looks amazing as Hellboy. Just as someone who knows what the original Hellboy looks like, this clearly looks like a good adaptation. He's hulking, he's huge, he's got the red skin, he's got the horns cut off, he's got the long hair, and I'm really excited to see what he brings to the role. This picture, while small and doesn't really show much about what the movie's going to be like, it is one that really does get me excited to see what David Harbour brings to the role. Now moving on, we're going to go over to Star Wars, where we have found out that JJ Abrams will now be directing Episode 9, as opposed to the original choice of Colin Trevorrow. Now, when I heard this news, I had very mixed emotions on it. Colin Trevorrow, I was very, very impressed with Jurassic World. I know a lot of people, some people find that a controversial movie because it's not very rich in the storytelling. It's very rehashed and, oh, there's a monster, what are we going to do? But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great spectacle movie. One you could just take the family to and just a popcorn muncher, as I'd call it. Because sometimes movies like that are good. They don't all have to be such rich Oscar-contending movies. And so when I heard Colin Trevorrow was directing Episode 9, I was excited because I liked Jurassic World, but I also had trepidations considering it seemed like they hired him on the sole aspect of, oh, you know how to make a $1 billion movie, so go ahead and make a $1 billion movie. When with Star Wars, being a massive Star Wars fan, I do enjoy the spectacle of Star Wars with the space battles, the X-Wings, TIE fighters, all that. But at the same time, I do want rich storytelling in my Star Wars movies. Personally, I am a big Kylo Ren defender. I think he is one of the greatest characters brought on screen in all movies in a very long time. I don't view him as this whiny emo kid. You can't see me, but I'm doing air quotations because I just don't see him as what everyone else sees him at. I do agree that he comes off as that way, but below just the outside of him, he's got a very rich character within. But now back towards Trevorrow and him stepping down or fired. We don't really know at this point with these Star Wars directors, as seen with the directors of Han Solo, Phil Lord and Chris Miller getting fired with like 4 or 6 weeks to go on filming. That's a situation we don't need to get into because it's not the topic right now. But JJ Abrams directing Episode 9 is very interesting to me because I loved Episode 7. When I first saw it, I thought it was the greatest movie ever made. Obviously, I've been brought back down to reality since then, but I was very impressed with Episode 7 when I first saw it because it felt like such a spectacle. After watching it a few times at home, I saw some more of the flaws in it. I heard of everyone compares it to Episode 4 and how similar they are, and I didn't see that the first time, but then more and more times I started to notice the similarities, and to some people that's a problem. To me, it really wasn't. So as far as JJ Abrams directing Episode 9, I'm excited, but with hesitation, because JJ Abrams is a great director. He knows how to take on a franchise in whole, and we saw that with Episode 9. Not Episode 9, I apologize, Episode 7. We saw that with the Star Trek reboot and Star Trek Into Darkness, which Star Trek Into Darkness, a lot of people complain about that movie. I find it to be magnificent, honestly. Better than the original, better than the Star Trek reboot. We don't need to get into the originals right now. But with JJ Abrams, with Episode 9, I'm afraid that we're going to see more of the same storytelling styles, same aspects, and that worries me. Because I want to see Star Wars take risks. Like, there was a lot of great in The Force Awakens with Kylo Ren. A lot of people compare him to Anakin Skywalker, but I see him as more than that. But then there's obviously the similarities with Starkiller Base and the Death Star and Rey and Luke. They're very similar story beats. And personally, I didn't have a huge problem with that when I first saw it. But if Episode 8 turns out to be an Empire remake and Episode 9 turns out to be a Return of the Jedi remake, then that's when I start to feel like there's problems. That's why right now I haven't seen The Last Jedi. So if The Last Jedi turns out to be a great original take, which I believe it will be, on the Star Wars lore, then I am excited. However, if it turns out to share too many same story beats with Empire Strikes Back, that's when this news of Abrams directing Episode 9 gives me fear. But as of right now, when I hear the name JJ Abrams directing a Star Wars movie, I don't understand why I wouldn't be excited for it or why I would dislike it. So as for Abrams directing Episode 9, instead of Colin Trevorrow, I do really like the move. And speaking of that, with the release date going back to December, I am a huge fan of that. Because the May release date, I understand it's the original Star Wars release date, but at the same time, May for movies has changed so much since 1977, 1980, 1983, when the original Star Wars came out. In May is when the blockbusters come out, when the Marvel movies come out, when the DC movies come out, when the huge spectacle, huge explosion movies come out. And Star Wars, I would never say would get lost in the shuffle, but I have fear that Star Wars I wouldn't appreciate it as much, considering Avengers Infinity War comes out in May. There's another one, I forget. what's coming out this upcoming... Oh, Han Solo is coming out this upcoming May. And that going up against Infinity War, I'll tell you right now, I look forward more to Avengers Infinity War over Han Solo, especially after the director issues they've been having. But with the December release date, what gets me excited is it's a month where it is purely Star Wars. No more, no less. It is, well, of course, we have Christmas as well, but what's better than the Christmas season where a week before we get our presents early and we get to see Luke Skywalker back on the big screen? Honestly, December is the perfect release date for Star Wars because nothing else comes out in that month. And now, since Star Wars has staked its claim as this is our movie release month, no one else is going to go near it. And that gives a nice break period from the rush of May where a lot of movies come out and a lot of stakes are in other movies and the money gets more spread out. I want to see Star Wars succeed, and I don't want to go into a Star Wars movie without a lot of hype. And the fact that trailers will come out in the fall season, and as we get closer and closer to the release date, it gets me more excited for Star Wars in December. Rather, with May, I feel as if I have a responsibility to see all these movies, and personally, I wouldn't lose it in the shuffle, but I can see how other people would. All right, that's it for Star Wars. But now we're going to go on to the Thor Ragnarok posters. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just noticed them in my Instagram feed, and I thought they were worth talking about. So the main poster is just a generic big... Whoever the main character is, in this case Thor, is standing big with all the sub-characters standing around him. And it's got, they're pushing this movie as very colorful and very different. I wanted Thor Ragnarok to be a dark, end-of-the-world movie. It seems it's going to be more on Guardians of the Galaxy, and that's not a bad thing because of how successful Guardians is, but it's not what I wanted from Thor. Of course, I have yet to see the movie. It could just be a old trick of advertising where they advertise a very kid-friendly, this is a great adventure movie, and then it turns out to be dark. Who knows? The director, Taika Waititi, has come out and said that it is a dark movie, so no matter what the posters show, I am excited regardless. Real quick, as we only have about 2 minutes left, I wanted to get into Actor of the Week. Now, I don't know how this could go to anyone else but Bill Skarsgård. Bill Skarsgård plays Pennywise in the new It remake and does such a phenomenal job. I personally want to see him play the Joker in this Joker origin movie that's coming out. I think he would be phenomenal there. But this is a kid who's going to get lots of work, despite the fact that his family name is Skarsgård, and we all know the lore of that family name. This kid is going to get lots and lots of work after this portrayal. Maybe even I doubt there will be Oscar buzz, but I wouldn't be surprised if you hear little rumblings. At first, I had Dylan O'Brien as my Actor of the Week just because of the new movie American Assassin and what he's going to bring to the table there, because a lot of people see him emerging as a big movie star, and it doesn't hurt that he's rubbing shoulders with the likes of Michael Keaton, but in terms of performance, this is Actor of the Week. This is not Movie Star of the Week. And Bill Skarsgård absolutely takes the cake there. Now, before we go, I just wanted to recommend movies to see this weekend. Mother, with an exclamation point, starring Jennifer Lawrence, comes out this weekend. And I don't know much about the movie, but the trailers do look very interesting and looks very suspenseful, very eerie. And I think that's something that would be worth seeing. And, of course, the movie It, making a lot of money and looks to be a very successful movie and a very good movie. I will be seeing it this weekend because I can't just ignore the hype. But that will about do it for today's episode. I thank you all for listening, and this has been the Real Talk Podcast.